The New Son of Adam. A Mescaline Trip Report by Russ. Posted at irwid.org May 2nd, 2018. I've been fairly curious about entheogens for 6 years, ever since I tried mushrooms at age 14. And from then on, I've added about 7 more mushroom experiences, and have experimented with MDMA on half a dozen occasions. I've also done DMT 14 times, and I'm very familiar with marijuana. I've tried boiled San Pedro soup before, but it always comes out to an awful tasting bitter sludge with an embarrassingly low mescaline content, which provides an experience that almost always fails to compensate for its time-consuming process of meticulous spine removing, boiling, straining, then boiling again, then straining again, and, like I mentioned, the taste is just awful. So I thought of finding a new way to extract copious amounts of mescaline from San Pedro. I bought 900 grams of powdered San Pedro for just about $99 off an online vendor, and simply by following a few websites' methods, I found out which extraction method was the simplest, most economic and most productive, which resulted in 2 to 3 grams of highly potent extract of mescaline hydrochloride. The procedure was a success, but now, it's time to begin to explain the events that took place throughout the evening, or at least try to. It's 10 PM, and the starry night of northwest Arkansas illuminates everything abound to the curious languor of the evening, including the darker mysteries of my mind, at best recounting the old wives' tales from southerly swamp regions of the madness that one gets by staring at the moon without divine intent. As my 2 friends, Amy and Tony, who are to be my 2 companions throughout the journey, they stare at the moon for hours on end. I produce 8 greyish-black pills filled with mescaline. Tony comes along for the ride and takes 3, and I take 5. 10:45 PM. We drive over to a friend's house who lives out in the countryside. My friends enjoy the social regime inside the other room. Marijuana, cigarettes, video games, girls gossip, men talk about politics. The mescaline hates these sort of conventional seductions, and so do I. I walk out the door alone and venture around his property. There is an enormous pond where doves flock. Graciously they dive from dark sky to heed the language of the crooning night, and motionlessly enjoy their sojourning bath. There is an island on the pond with a narrow strip of land that bridges across to the other side. On this island, there is a highly erect gazebo, underneath which is a fire pit. It was this exact fire pit where I first aspired to become a shaman, and next to the gazebo there is a dock that I meditated on, which began dissolving my own conceptions of fear. I felt sorry for those who do. Suddenly, from the bowels of my stomach, I puked out the mescaline and dry heaved everything that wasn't it. The mescaline was coming on strong now. 11:15 PM, and I come back inside. Everyone stares at me amazed or frightened, but I take no glance. They begin to talk about boring things once more, and I start feeling a little crazy. Amy is leaning on the side of the couch. Unnoticing, I crawl on the tile floor behind her, feeling like a panther or a snake, as I spring up behind her and grab her by the waist, and she scolds me, to which I apologise in laughter. Mescaline makes everything seem like playthings, like lizards or frogs I capture and want to set free. At 12 AM, my friends Amy and Tony are spontaneously driven. They assert that we leave, but I tell them no. I'll walk the 5 or so miles home. Everything at this point is in liquid vision. Colours are bright and shimmering. A rare banquet of dreamy colours, hallucinations, that seem to enlighten the mind. Reds, yellows, blues, purples, all merging and splashing into one another. At 1 AM, Tony freaks out in the car and suggests that we get to his house ASAP. Tony, who has visited shamans and knows of this other world, known as the spiritual world, begins to panic, and Amy tries to calm him down. Disappointed in him, I understand, but cannot but help that feel that anyone's shift into anxiety gives me a strange sensation that Mescaline's quasi-holy magic grows by devouring off irrational energies. As we get inside Tony's house, I notice the room that they fled to is queerly proportioned. There is a strange 50s hunky-dory Leave It to Beaver atmosphere, with a little wooden television in the corner. It feels somewhat melancholic, like a tomb for the elderly. During the hours of 1 to 3 a.m, we all sit in the room and talk of the shamanic poetry of the universe, as well as creationism, and talk about the technologies of Egypt, Greeks, philosophy, parlour myths, fables, Romanized America, our hopes for a new world, and acid. My thought process is very cyclic. I'm able to jump between loop thoughts intravenously, while maintaining in perfect empirical logical order. Amy asserts her opinions by quoting the Beatles songs, and a countless number of times she utters, "I am he, and we are she, and she is me, and we are all together." They both start to talk to me about fairies, which I think nothing of, and try not to laugh at them. But then suddenly, I am able to see into the future. On and on, I predict it as we are all sitting around. They're watching Aqua Teen Hunger Force, in which a character known as Meatwad is coaxed to walk out into the middle of the street or something. I then experience the same events happen, reoccurring over and over, my hallucinations leaving me in an awful state. I'm aware suddenly of the gravity of God. In penance, it bends my mind, and suddenly I realise I had to escape this house in order to escape this plague of hallucinations that deny power against will. So, I grab a backpack, put a few fake books, and wandered out into the woods. I could barely hear them calling my name as I made a path into the woods, and by the time 3 a.m. to 9 a.m. rolled around, this is where I became as I can only describe as the first son of Adam. And no, I am not religious. I am in fact quite into Nietzsche, so no biblical vanity here. Now I am no longer in control of logic, nor am I capable of distinguishing the bogus. The woods are mysterious and vibrant. Everything dances. The road is far away. Across this stream, and the feeling of water rushing against my pants and feet is cathartic. The mescaline loves this feeling as much as I do. Upon walking out of the stream up this hill in the forest, I am told by the mescaline to take off all my clothes. Hesitating, it demands again. So now I am suddenly naked. It tells me there is a tiger approaching, my nemesis. It runs behind the trees, sliding into shadows. I carry this stick with me until I feel I can continue without the fear of its presence. The mescaline demands that I try to pass myself out unconscious, by coherently as I could chant words pre-selected for me while dancing. The hallucinations at this point are drowning me in their spiritual mystical ceremony, and at times I fall to the ground and lose bodily control. Ever so damnly I demanded, that I am commanded that when I fall, if I have done everything right, that the fairies, who are to me like a tribal band of beautiful love-making hunters, that I may venture into their realm. Gods is up there churning my mind for my vanity in no needing of a god. I am desperate. I am thrown to the ground, grovelling for redemption. Finally, I do it all right. I am told by Amy and Tony as my spiritual guides that I'll get it. They repeatedly say, I am he and we are she, and she is me and we are all together. So as I say it, Tony impedes and says to me, Russell, remember the archetypes. And I do. I pick up the stick I've broken to fight off the phantasmagoric lion, and yell as loud as I could, I am he and we are she, and she is me and we are all together. Really, I hate the Beatles, but I got it. I stood there naked, crying, holding a stick in one hand, and I listened out. I heard the fairy warriors shouting in triumph from some distance. I was told that I did this all wrong. Then suddenly, back on the ground I fell, writhing in madness, exhausted, leaves in my mouth which I choked upon. It was willed that I choked right now. I am he, and we are she, and she is me, and we are all together. I said this over and over, lost, hoping to die and end this senseless nightmare. As I repeated these words over and over again, I finally came out of my hallucinations and thought that I had never been born until this very moment. This was my first day in the world, and mescaline was the cure for my false matrix program. I came out of my hallucinations and thought that I had never been born until now. This was my first day in the world. I am as insignificant as these insects, these trees, and the self-centeredness is what separates me from my creator. I have to be nothing. I have to loose the constraints of social ignobility, as well as power, fame, money, religion, anything that isn't a part of my ideal self. So, I became nothing, no one, ageless, eternal, human too much or no more. The light of the world suddenly squinted upon me. It was morning. I walked in my new body and came suddenly to a meadow. I looked one way and contemplated the beauty of this being in time, and I felt the spirits of the forest at one with me. I felt like a character in a Renaissance painting. I thought with the forest. I ate roots from the ground, fresh green and verdant. I had not eaten in over 24 hours, literally. I didn't want to leave the meadow, as beautiful as it was, but my feet were bloody from walking through thorn bushes without feeling a thing. I was even ready to drink the creek water, but it dried up on me overnight. I was lost, and my hallucinations were contorting landscapes, when suddenly I came across a field of cows. I looked and looked for their troughs, but the males looked angry and walked closer defiantly. Suddenly I came upon a gravel path that carried me over to a road. The end of the path had the words, "Goodbye, don't come back," spray painted all over it. I stood there looking at it, when suddenly a car came by with a fairly perturbed lady driving. "What are you doing out here, naked boy?" she yelled. She let me in and asked, "What's your name anyway?" For some reason I replied by saying, "I am he, and we are she, and she is me." At 10 AM I was taken to the hospital in an ambulance. "But really," I said, "Nah, just some food please, I'm fine, trust me," to the reluctant EMT. All the people that dealt with me there had incredibly beautiful eyes. I was still very high, and the nurse had told me that my heart rate was extremely low, almost to the point of no return. She took 3 samples of my blood, and normally 10 cc's of my blood drawn is enough to make me faint or make me nauseous. But I felt perfectly normal in this moment. Except that, the police came in and asked me what I was on. I told them K2. I was brought back home by my father, who I figured would scold me with derogatory words. "Fuck, what were you thinking?" But instead he didn't say a word the entire ride home. And boy, did I sleep. I contemplated my journey for hours on end. I figured I needed to get it off my chest, or maybe it might inspire someone to search themselves. However, I do not condone the use of any drug or for anybody to do what I did. All in all, I love mescaline, but I may have taken too much. 700 to 800 milligrams seems to have been the appropriate dosage. Equating dosage with experience and comparing other experience with high amounts of mescaline with mine. I will do this again, and like Zarathustra did, find myself lost in the desert to get the feel of the landscapes peyote and San Pedro had reshaped for the indigenous of Taos, Mexico and Peru. Thank you for reading my experience.
A mescaline-induced death and rebirth. How mescaline killed the old me and gave birth to a new one. October 7th, 2012. It is now 2 days after my first mescaline trip, and I feel more awakened than ever. I feel transformed, healed and aligned. I am renewed, refreshed, open, positive. Let's just say, I am everything that I am not. The mescaline took me by surprise. I didn't know what was coming. I'm an experienced psychonaut, but this was something new entirely. On the morning of October 5th, I ingested approximately 300 milligrams of mescaline hydrochloride. The taste was so incredibly bitter that it made me quiver in disgust. It took a little over an hour for the effects to start kicking in. As the visuals became increasingly intense, I decided to depart from where I was at the time and get home as quickly as possible. As soon as I arrived back at my place, I went straight to the bathroom to brush my teeth. What should have taken 2 minutes in the bathroom instead took me about half an hour. I could not stop looking at my teeth, my face, my body, and all of my tattoos. I studied the human body that I inhabited. It seemed so peculiar to me. I asked myself, why is my consciousness bound by this organic structure? How can I break free from identifying with this body? Because it surely is not me. I pondered about these things for a while. After some time in the bathroom, I left and went to go lay down in my bed. I didn't turn on any music and I didn't turn on any lights. Neither did I smoke any weed, which is something I normally do while tripping, and I did not get up from my bed for the entire duration of the trip. Instead, I spent the entire time meditating and rarely opened my eyes. The closed-eye visuals were by far the most amazing thing I had ever witnessed. I was caught in a stream of fractals, kaleidoscopes, webs, spirals, cubes, and other complex geometric shapes and patterns. I was geometry itself. I was overwhelmed with awe and wonder as I realised how sacramental all of it was. I needed this more than anything. I felt like this was necessary for me because I had recently been neglecting the spiritual side of life for a more artificial, separated, negative type of thinking. As the awakening process began, I literally started crying. I cried tears of sorrow and tears of hope simultaneously. I was sad because the old me that I had started to identify with was dying. I was hopeful because I was realising that a new me, a better me, was beginning to manifest. However, the manifestation would not be complete until the end of the trip, so for now I just simply felt dead. The energy in my room was getting darker. I opened my eyes in fear. I began to see cockroaches and other alien-like bugs crawling all over the walls. Cobwebs emerged as everything seemed to get dustier. I began to feel very old and disgusting. The darkness had consumed my entire being. It completely broke me, and I felt neglected, hated, and worthless. Through all of this, I realised that I was facing my own demons. I was witnessing myself from a third-person perspective, and I was desperately trying to tell myself that I am not supposed to live life this way. I screamed at myself. You are bound by hatred and negativity. Break the chains, stop the cycle. Don't let it be what you are anymore. Die, because only through death will you become alive again. As my being began to transform before my eyes, a sense of joy showered upon me. Ancient tribal warriors and gods took over my field of vision. They were reflections of my new character. I realised that I have the ability to be anything that I want to be. I just needed to find what it was that I'm passionate about and pursue that from this moment forward. And not only would I pursue it, but I would pursue it in an uplifting and positive manner. This would be my way of impacting the earth while I was still on it. Once again, just like with my other psychedelic experiences, a timeless sense of love for all things, and a feeling of connectivity to everything took over me. To me, mescaline is more entheogenic than LSD or psilocybin. In comparison to the other two, it felt a lot more dreamy and spiritual. I was able to meditate very, very deeply, and that was extremely beneficial to my health. I would definitely consume this substance again, and I would recommend it to anyone seeking a healing experience. Overall, I came out a more positive, spiritual and holistic individual, and I believe that this type of thinking is something we desperately need as humans. Thank you for reading. Peace and love to you all.
Incomprehensible Clarity, an MHRB, Syrian Rue and San Pedro report, uploaded to Shroomery on the 6th of September 2008. It began when I received my package. I knew the power that was contained within the pink powder. I respected it, feared it, but was undeniably pulled towards it. Having experimented with the pure form of what I was about to take, I knew I was ready. I immediately brewed the substance into a thick liquid and left it in my refrigerator, waiting for just the right moment to take it in. I typically don't have visual trips, but I felt like this might have the capacity to give me precisely that. I waited for a day when I was in especially good spirits, lots of positive energy, as I had just picked up a new job and found a new girlfriend. The sun was shining, large cumulus clouds in the sky seen through the window. As my roommate left for work, I drank the Syrian Rue tea. I smoked a bit of green and waited. I began to feel a weight lift from me, a tingling at the top of my head, utterly divine energy waiting to be released. I snack on some of the leftover cross sections from the San Pedro cactus, about 3 inches of it. I can envision them in some kind of Mexican dish being delicious, but right now, not so much. I grabbed a 20-gram pre-measured dose of mimosa, pulled a trash can up to my space in expectation of the coming purge, and pulled back the brew quickly. The abrasive particles slid across my tongue. I washed them back with water, swished it around and closed my eyes. I know I'm going to vomit, but for now I try to focus on everything besides my stomach protests. An MC Escher starting to really pop on me. All those damn stairs leading into each other. The swans reflected as elephants. They seem to know what I'm up to. They're watching me from the dreamscape with expecting eyes, sizing me up. My stomach lurches and I feel a pressure in my throat. Not yet. Focus on distracting myself. A cigarette. The habit disgusts me, but it sounds like just what I need right now. I head outside and pull in the toxic smoke. So relaxing, but I can tell the second I stop sucking it in, my stomach is going to tell me to go to hell. Oh well, don't focus on that right now. God damn. Life is beautiful. I lay in the grass and stare at the clouds. I watch my own micro clouds dissipate into the macro above. Who knows where that'll end up? I put out the cigarette in the grass. That tree never looked so alive. Okay, it's time to go back inside. I head back in and grab a large glass of water. Turns out I didn't need that trash can. I've got control of this. Into the bathroom. Alright, countdown is a go. I know it's coming, might as well help it along. Over the toilet, finger in my throat. One quick stream of black. Blech. Down some water, stick my finger down my throat again. Might as well make sure it's all gone. A few lingering bits come up. Alright, it's all gone now. Whew, that was much easier than expected. I brush my teeth, remove all traces of the bile and irritating particles from my mouth. The shower sounds refreshing right about now. I turn off the lights and sit cross-legged in the shower. Visions of the tree of life entering my psyche as the water bounces off my flesh. It's peaceful, utterly placid, and my mind begins to drift. Suddenly from the top of my vision come none other than Jesus Christ, crucified on a technicolor cross. There is no darkness here any longer.
looking at me and knowing, holy fucking shit, radiating energy like a star through the human dimension, like pure beauty warming my soul. Come on now, Jesus, you know I don't buy into all that now. I acknowledge your spirit in my heart, what more do you want? No answer. Just a revelation. We've known the entire story all along. This was all... everything. Planned out. Visions of pyramids, wars, slaves, metropolises and dragonflies. All of these things were predicted long ago. How long have we had this map for? Why don't we all just get to the goddamn point? Suddenly, I'm a young child lost at a carnival. The outlines of everything are made out of light, but the overall presence is one of darkness. What's going on here? A clown beckons me to follow him, grabs my hand, pulls me forward through a series of tunnels lined with every sort of useless carnival widget and refusing to slow down despite my resistance. Where the hell are we going? I get a bad feeling about this. I've always hated clowns. Emotions, they're toys. We go through a doorway. He releases my hand and jumps to the side. A gigantic spike on a pendulum swings into me. Suspended from the ceiling, it tears the doorway to shreds. Ah, damn it. Should have known that clown would trick me. Now I'm impaled, being flung around in circles on this damn thing. It loops around and around, gaining momentum. I am so disorientated right now, and I can feel myself sliding off the spike. It reaches a pinnacle, and I'm flung over the carnival into the clouds. I'm soaring with no control, with the air rushing all around me, filling my sinuses, and I feel very much like a bird at this point, until gravity takes hold. I see a mountain below. No, a volcano. I land into it, and am absorbed by the magma within. The clown is at the rim of the volcano, smiling down on me, looking quite content with himself. Feeling my body disperse into the Earth's bloodstream and utterly dissolving into void. So that's it. I'm just some kind of ritual sacrifice in your twisted carnival. I've had enough of these shenanigans. I feel the sides of the shower, turn on the light. The visuals disperse, and I'm left only with the bathroom, which has attained great clarity but is utterly unremarkable. The visions I've had are still overwhelmingly on my mind. I know I won't ever forget them. I dry my body off and head out into the living room. I feel utterly calm, despite the intensity of what I've experienced. I breathe. Everything breathes as well. It's all alive, and I'm particularly aware of that fact right now. Surrounded by artifacts of consciousness. I feel very grateful to be alive and experiencing this world. I drink some orange juice, head outside into the divine sunshine. Everything is beyond beautiful. I close my eyes, drift into the sounds of the city and the life all around me. This was all planned. Visions of my life flash before me, especially the negative parts. The voice of my inner demons encompasses me, but unlike mushroom trips, the voice has no power here. A voice of higher authority quickly steps in to accompany the recall of my darkest hours. Reminds me that despite the evils I've committed over the span of my life, that I can do good. I can change. I feel as if I'm in the room with a therapist who already knows my whole life story, and knows the solution to every problem I've ever had. Every insecurity is illusionary. Wow. It all boils down to love. Love. What else is there? I thank the universe for giving me this blessing. Every moment of this experience, a weight is being lifted from me, and I don't know how long I sit in the grass drifting through my life, guided by this wise teacher. It may as well have been infinity. Suddenly I hear a voice. I open my eyes. My friend rides up. I tell him that I am extremely far gone right now. It's true as well, but I've taken so much from this experience, I decide to invite him in despite my desire to continue my solitary trip, and we sit for a while, discussing life and the universe. I begin to come down. I feel like my soul has been cleansed. I tell him about the brew. He's interested. I explain a bit about the nature of the substance, give him a small dose, and tell him to call me in the morning. The Ultimate Truth of the Universe. A San Pedro, Salvia Divinorum, Cannabis and Nitrous Oxide Trip Report by Mescaline, uploaded to Irwin.org on August 20th, 2007.
I ingested 10 grams of San Pedro alcohol extract dispersed in 26 gel caps this morning at 8 AM. It took me 30 minutes to swallow all the pills. I was taking the pills with lemon water. Roughly 20 minutes later I emptied my stomach in a most unpleasant purge. I have no idea how much mescaline really made it into my system. For the next few hours, any effects caused by the mescaline were subtle but enjoyable. I was feeling some flowing thoughts, an increased enjoyment of motion and colour. I spent the afternoon driving around with my sober friends. They were driving. Looking at apartments, eating at a Greek restaurant, where I only had 2 pieces of garlic toast, and taking a look at my friend's remodelled taekwondo studio. Overall, a nice day, and worth the purging and subtle nausea I felt most of the day. What I really want to communicate here is what happened at about 5 PM. We came back from the city to our house in the country, where my sober friends were going to watch a John Bastow video. I had little interest in the activity. I decided to use the opportunity to see how far I could go with the intoxicating substances I had available to me. A bit of background. I first took mushrooms and had a true entheogenic experience several months ago, and have since been playing with different substances and trying to figure out how those doors of perception actually work. I've smoked salvia twice and had interesting experiences both times. Those times I was smoking out of a small wooden pipe that I felt produced a fairly inefficient smoke transfer. So I recently borrowed a decent sized water pipe from my brother, who suggested I try the salvia with a little pot, and had some pot to give me. I have never smoked pot before, but took a small nug somewhat reluctantly. So with my friends downstairs and me on a comfortable foam mattress next to an open window, showing me a wonderful landscape of ocean and rolling fields and trees, a fish pond and the blue sky, I decided to smoke the salvia I had with the pot nugget. I should note here that I'm not positive about the doses of these substances. I did not weigh the salvia, but it was about half of a container that contained a gram when I bought it. Also, the product I was using was labelled 40x, but I believe it to be 5x. I have no real concept of what the pot weighed, but it was a small nug a bit larger than the eraser of a pencil. I had never used a water pipe before, and I'm not sure I fully got the concept of it, but I smoked the substances I described as best I could, taking about 4 to 5 lungfuls that I held for roughly 30 seconds each. Time was becoming quite confusing, so I'm not sure about these figures. For some amount of time, I would guess about 10 minutes, I enjoyed the somewhat confusing dissociative high produced by salvia. At one point I felt very much like I was floating on a cloud. Another, like my head and neck became rays of sunshine connecting to the sun. I felt like I was close to something. Some interesting thought that was hard to perceive because of the confusing effects of salvia. I had a strong drive to go deeper, and see if I couldn't catch that thought or realisation, despite the confusion. So I got up and got some nitrous equipment out of my closet, a balloon, a cheap cracker purchased at a head shop, and some food quality nitrous chargers. I sat back down near the window and emptied 2 nitrous chargers into the balloon. I took many deep breaths of air to ensure that my brain had adequate oxygen. Then I inhaled the nitrous and hyperventilated on the balloon for maybe a minute. I became very intoxicated and became almost inches from the realisation. It had something to do with drug use, the doors of perception, but I wasn't quite there. I decided to do another double dose of nitrous. I had quite a bit of difficulty filling the balloon with 2 more charges, but eventually had the job done. I was rather proud that I could still function in the world of tasks from the perception state I was in. I breathed in some more air, and then hyperventilated on this second double dose of nitrous. What happened next is the reason I'm writing this experience down. I truly feel that I made it to the ultimate understanding of the universe. I was on the edge of time, in hyperspace, truly in another dimension. I instantly felt I needed to express myself to my girlfriend, who we will call Kay. Only Kay was on vacation and nowhere near me, and probably didn't have a cell phone reception. I decided to write down the words I wanted to say to her. I attempted to open up something on my computer that would allow me to type, and ended up with a spreadsheet document. I wrote on about 5 rows of the spreadsheet at about 10:20. Here's what I wrote. Okay honey, list I just realised the whole meaning of life. That's not it, that's my girlfriend, that's Kay. Second row. Kay, full name. I was trying to realise something, and it's passed a bit, but I think I figured it out. Third row. I can barely type right now, but I want to tell you that I've found what I've been looking for. I may decide to go back, but I've been to the edge of the universe. 4th row. Holy shit, that's not me, that's me. Both things are the same. 5th row. The next thing that I felt like saying to you was the previous sentence. I forgot what I was going to say while I was writing that sentence. I also said shit a minute ago, but didn't write it while I was typing, between the I am and the forgot. At this point, I think I decided typing was too hard, but still very much so wanted to try and explain my realization to my friends. I went downstairs and interrupted their workout video to try and explain. They were quite generous for listening to a rantling, babbling buffoon. I spent the next hour or so trying to explain the ultimate truth to them. My words and explanations often ended in circles, but I described something about a deep realization that time is truly a 4th dimension, and that the Big Bang took place on the 3 dimensions that we live. I felt I had understood for one moment the nature of the Big Bang. It almost felt as though I was truly one with the universe, in the sense that I understood where every particle and electromagnetic wave currently were in the universe, and could see how they all trace back to the Big Bang. As I was trying to describe these and other metaphysical concepts, I continued to have moments of extreme understanding. A feeling that I'd come to a realization much too impossibly deep to try and describe. This led me to the thought that perhaps communication, symbols and emotions exist on yet another dimension from energy, matter, space and time. My friends slowly became uninterested in my rambling, and I became aware of this and decided to let them be. I continued having the feeling of utter realization, and was trying to put it all together, but couldn't quite make it. I felt that the reason for not being able to describe or explain it was because the drugs had shown me the ultimate truth of only the universe, or in other words, the first 3 dimensions. The following 2 dimensions of time and emotions were a whole separate realm which I had no hopes of truly realizing. I'm currently having difficulty integrating this experience. I feel I still have a lot to think about to try to put it all together, both in terms of metaphysics and integrating these realizations in my daily life. I will say though, that I feel I went as deep as a drug could possibly take me. On a final note, when I was there in the ultimate truth, I felt great goodness and joy. This led me to believe that the nature of the universe is benevolent and good. Perhaps that is the strongest lesson I can take from this experience. Showing me myself. A Mescaline trip report, uploaded to Iroid October 12, 2004 by Pulsetsar. At 1:20 PM, I measured out 25 grams of dried Trichocereus peruvianus cactus and ground it in a coffee grinder. This got it into a nice fine powder, but there were still some chunks here and there, so then I dumped it in my mortar and pestle and finished it off. I then proceeded over the course of the next half hour to meticulously load 45 to 500 mg gelatin capsules with the powder, stuffing more than 500 mg into each one with some effort. From what I read, this might contain anywhere between 200 and 400 mg of mescaline. It was an alkaloid profile similar to peyote, but with the advantage of being completely legal to grow and purchase. At around 1:55 PM, I began to swallow all 45 capsules, which took 10 minutes and 3 glasses of water. I hadn't eaten since the night before either. I then left to go to a festival to meet up with some friends. I got there and we made our way to the concert grounds. It was a beautiful day to be out in the sun on the huge open field of Grant Park, the Chicago skyline looking down over us. Kept checking my watch, and by 3 o'clock I concluded that my little experiment had failed. I was happy to note though, that there was absolutely no nausea at all, despite what many others had reported with this drug. I soon found out that I was much too hasty. Mescaline takes a long time to come on, but when it comes on strong. By 4 o'clock I was in the midst of the most amazing trip I've ever experienced. I had taken the big tryptamines before, LSD and psilocybin, but this was completely different. There were no plateaus and no going up and coming down with mescaline. It was more like a door was opened slowly, and then at the end of the trip slowly closed. But while it was open, nothing was held back and nothing fluctuated. This was a surprise to me, since I expected the usual scalloped pattern trip. With mescaline rather, I could take it as deep or superficial as I wanted. Every time I thought I was coming down, it was really me just shifting focus to a different aspect of the trip. I should note now that once open, the door to perception didn't close until 7 AM the next morning,
almost 15 hours later. So much for the 10 to 12 hour estimate I had heard. None of the people I was with knew I was tripping, and nobody suspected a thing. In fact, the interactions I had with others that day were amazing. I felt a real connection with everyone that I talked to. My communication ability was not impaired at all, and I was able to focus so thoroughly on another human being and really connect with them. I noticed that most people, when they talk to me, don't look me directly in the eye. The intimacy and power that comes from looking into another person's eyes as you interact should never be underestimated, but also used with discretion, since it can make many people uncomfortable. A sea, no, an ocean of people drift by as I walk around. I was exposed to so many faces and lives that day. A girl stands in the corner, and I notice how sad she is, and is amazed that nobody else sees it. I then look closer, and see that she is jealous of her friend playing kissy face with some guy. I wanted to go over and console her, but it is not my business, and not my place to interfere with the all-powerful lessons that could be learnt by both parties. I tell my friend T about it, and he agrees, but is amazed that I was able to perceive that with so little effort. Looking at T, I almost get lost a little, and give away my state. Every little stubble of hair on his face was a universe in and of itself. The detail of the external world on Mescaline is unmatched. It doesn't create visual hallucinations the way that LSD does. It rather enhances one's ability to perceive the world visually. Every shadow, every crease, every reflection was available to me. It's amazing how much people move their facial muscles. During my trip, it was impossible for people to lie or hide anything from me. Their faces were so transparent that I could see right into their souls and know what they were thinking and feeling. Perhaps this is why I was able to interact with them so well. And then, I closed my eyes. What wondrous kaleidoscopic displays. There was no end to the patterns I saw. However, when I sat to meditate in the sun and concentrated on the third eye on my forehead, everything became still and the kaleidoscope disappeared. Never before was I capable of such concentration. My mind began to merge with the universe around me, and I experienced a joy unknown to most people in the world. As I opened my eyes and came back, I felt such compassion and sadness watching the people around me writhing in the delusion of their own isolated existence. If they could only see the world the way I do for a second, they would not live like they do. How could they not know how significant and insignificant they were? Alas, I am here in this world to better myself and do what I can to bring happiness to those around me. And I went about that task for the rest of the day. I saw myself as a nobody. Why should my feelings and desires matter more than anyone else's? I'm fully willing to let the world trample on me so long as something good comes out of it. It's amazing what ability I now have to make people happy. Something clicked that day and stuck with me. I called my mum the day afterwards and we had the best conversation we've had in years. I can't wait to be a physician. My love of people is increasing every day. During the trip, I was approached by 2 or 3 people preaching the love of Jesus, handing out flyers while saying, "Jesus loves you, man." Any other time, I would have refused the flyer and ignored them. But with the doors of my mind swung open though, I accepted their love and reflected it back 100-fold. I used to think of myself a Hindu, but that has no meaning now. I may as well be a Christian. What does it matter? The garment I wear and slogan I sling, when we all return in the end from whence we came. Gusta came on with music perfect for the day, followed by an amazing Pete Yorn performance and finally the Wallflowers. When I closed my eyes again, I tried another experiment, testing my memory. How vivid it was. I could remember so many experiences in my life that were previously inaccessible to me. What was amazing about Mescaline is that it not only brings out detail in current experiences, but also past ones. I was remembering my friends' faces, and I could see them in as much detail as if they were in front of me. I remember all the little mannerisms and features on almost every single person in my life. What's amazing is that I was noticing, in retrospect, aspects of their behaviour and their looks that I didn't notice the first time around. It seems true that the mind records everything and leaves it ready for retrieval and analysis later. I've always known what an amazing memory I have, but I'm certain that anyone is capable of this. Darkness falls upon Chicago. I had my mind finger on the pulse of the city and felt it slow down. Fireworks are going off in Lincoln Park as we ride past it. I was practicing controlling the trip, increasing and then decreasing the intensity as much as I wanted. I literally felt like nothing was impossible for me to accomplish. It was all a matter of how much effort must be put forth. I vowed never to use the words "I can't" anymore, and decided to stop complaining about things. It was really hot that day, and there were a lot of attacks to my personal comfort, but I was able to bear them all simply by detaching my attention from them. It was a Friday, and I was observing my weekly fast, which would not normally be easy to do at the Taste of Chicago, but that day I wasn't fazed at all. My companions were impressed, and I hope the example of conviction that I set for them rubs off and allows them to pursue their goals in life. It's amazing to me how many things that we personally are responsible for, and yet we always find a way to place the blame elsewhere. My knee hurts, so I can't play as well today. It's too hot for me to walk outside. I can't eat tomatoes because they make me sick. I could never fast for a day, blah blah blah. People need to take control of their lives. The locus of control for 99% of life is within the individual and not elsewhere. This flies in the face of contemporary psychological thought, but it really is a truth, even if it is buried deep within us. I end up in Evanston, watching the stars. My friends ask me how to find the North Star, and I tell them about lining up the two stars in the Big Dipper and how they form a line pointing to it. This simple fact never seemed so beautiful before, but I resisted launching into another session of wonder at the clockwork order inherent in the universe. We walked all around the Lakeville in the Northwestern University campus, which is beautiful in summer and even more beautiful when perceived through Mescaline eyes. We walked a lot that day. I was impressed by the amount of energy at my disposal given the lack of food. I could summon it seemingly out of nowhere and channel it wherever I wanted. At 2 AM in the morning, my friend suggested I eat. I found their concern funny, but thought that since it was the next day, I may as well break my fast. The sensory experience of eating was remarkable. Flavours have so much depth and detail to them and are packed with potent association with memories. The sense of touch was enhanced along with all others. I could even feel mosquitoes landing on my skin, and I don't know how this was possible. Although I didn't have any, I bet that sex on mescaline would have been an amazing and extremely rewarding and powerful experience if with the right person. Although the sensations and act of sex would have been extremely pleasurable, the desire for sex was not enhanced in the slightest. How could it have been? My mind was pure and free from such desires. There was so much more to the world than a passing sexual encounter at this point. As I wind up at my friend's apartment to fall asleep, I sit in bed for a couple of hours after my nightly meditation, waiting for the trip to wind down. I begin yet another memory experiment, and begin to recall some of the earliest events in my life, tracing it all the way up to the present. The memories were vivid and detailed as expected. The trip ends, but the effect will be with me forever. I'm amazed at how a plant is capable of generating a full-blown, legitimate mystical experience. I know now how imperfect I really am, and must work towards making all of the realizations of that wonderful day a reality. One has to live his message for the world, not preach it. All it takes is a little practice. I am a male vintage hippie who has had a fair share of psychedelic experiences in his time. None, however, could equal up to the life-changing trip I experienced after ingesting the divine cactus. It was Saturday in El Paso, Texas. I was out of the house by 6 o'clock looking for my well-known friend, lysergic acid diethylamide. Now up until this point, I had never had a problem finding acid, but this time would be different. I was very disappointed to hear that I had not succeeded in my journey for a dose. That is until I came across a Mexican-American, let's call him Juan, that I'd recently jammed with. I remember him telling me about a certain cactus he had experimented with while he was seeking enlightenment in the Chihuahuan Desert, Mexico. My curiosity arose. Of course, being the desperate bastard I was at the time, I anxiously begged him to hook me up with peyote. Now, when I say hook up, I'm not giving off the idea that I am a stoner who abuses psychoactive drugs for the feeling. I have not, nor will I ever put a drug in my body for a reason other than to expand my mind, and for a better understanding of Earth before it was infected by society. Juan informed me that I was in luck, and a few of his friends actually did have peyote in their possession. My disappointment quickly turned to ecstatic joy. "Hop in," Juan said. I quickly jumped in the vintage 1971 Volkswagen van, and we were off for a religious experience I will never forget. When we arrived, I was surprised, but rather excited, to walk into an abode-style house full of Native Americans. They told me what to expect of the peyote, and that I would experience nausea, especially being the size I am, but they told me it was nothing compared to the knowledge I would gain from the trip. Okay, enough of the novel bullshit, time for the good stuff. They opened a bag about 3 feet high and probably 1 foot in diameter. Inside was nearly 200 ready-to-serve peyote buttons. They handed me 13, which just happens to be my lucky number. They told me to be prepared for the bitter taste I would experience. Man, were they right. I've never in my life tasted something so bitter. But hey, you can't expect something that sprouts from the ground and stuck in a bag to taste like marshmallows. I finished all 13 of them after about 30 minutes. Probably an hour after ingestion, the nausea was extreme. I went outside to vomit, and vomit I did. God damn did I vomit. The negativity of the puking didn't compare to what was about to happen. I walked around to the back of the house to see the mountains of El Paso, quite astonishing from certain angles, and being that everyone else was already tripping, I knew I wouldn't be missed greatly. So off I was, to hike the mountains of western Texas. After about 30 minutes of hiking, the time now being about 10:30 PM, I stopped at my destination. That was whatever looked appealing to me. I laid down on my back. The stars never looked so beautiful and in perfect order. I stood up and looked around. Everything was so incredibly fascinating and beautiful. The shrubs' leaves glistened with light. It was at this time when I fell back down into an Indian-style sitting position. The intensity of the beauty grew every second. Every time I blinked, a rainbow of colours appeared. So I closed my eyes in a meditative style. And this is when my vision arose. In this vision, I was standing still in a field looking straight ahead at a buffalo. It was probably 50 yards away from me. It moved forward slowly, probably an inch every minute or so. The buffalo didn't move in position though when it came forward. It just sort of slided towards me. Now let's jump forward in time about an hour later when it is about 3 feet in front of me. The past hour I had been so amused by the buffalo coming towards me. I was anticipating what would happen when it got to me. Nearly 1,000 thoughts were running through my head at once, perfectly clear. I'm not sure exactly what they were now, but it seemed that every thought was how excited I was to see what would happen when the buffalo reached me. Now let's skip to the part where the buffalo is 6 inches away from me. The anticipation then turned to fear and terror. It was coming head on towards my stomach. It wasn't going to stop. It was probably the most terrifying feeling I have ever experienced. A few minutes later, roughly 5,000 thoughts later, it was centimetres away from my body. If this weren't a vision, my pants would have been soaked with urine. Here's the exciting part. The buffalo is literally touching my skin, though I feel nothing, nor do I fall back. It slowly just moves through my body, gliding right past me, well, through me. A few minutes later it is totally behind me, and all that I can see is the field and where it meets the horizon. Now to end this vision, nothing could have done it better than what happens next. At the start of the horizon, a white light arises, then it suddenly grows to cover up my whole screen, meaning everything I can see or everything in front of me. And just like that, I'm out of my visionary state, back in the mountains sitting just like I was before this happened, except it was totally bright. That vision at which seemed to have taken place in about 2 hours had lasted about 10. I looked around at everything I had admired the night before. I say this in the simplest form, though no words can describe how I really felt. I honestly felt one with everything around me, everything I saw. And I have felt this way towards everything since this experience. I walked back down to the Indian's house and knocked on the door to find Juan saying, "Hey man, I'm ready to go." Just like that. No, "Hey, where did you go? We were worried." Odd, but not offensive. He took me back to my house, where I sat for the rest of the day wondering what all of my vision meant. It surely couldn't have happened for no reason. It had to have had a meaning, and I was going to find out what that meaning was. 6 months later, I had travelled with friends up to Oklahoma next to Lawton, where the Wichita Mountains lie. My friend and I were walking around. Everything was well and peaceful. Next thing we knew, a buffalo had gone wild and started running around at dangerous speeds in a psychotic manner. My friend ran off in fear for his life, but I, on the other hand, was reminded of my vision on peyote. The buffalo started running towards me. In a matter of 10 seconds, I had relived the 10-hour-long experience that had occurred, and something in my mind told me not to move. When I snapped back into reality, the buffalo was standing right in front of me, holding completely still. It had gone from carelessly running around to standing completely still in a matter of seconds. My friends were astonished, as was I. That's when I discovered what my vision meant, and up to this date, this is the best experience I have ever encountered. Definitely what I would call a spiritual experience. I highly recommend the spiritual, medicinal, or religious use of peyote to anyone seeking enlightenment. Focusing the Third Eye. A Mescaline trip report by Brent, uploaded to erowid.org on July 20th, 2009. Before I can really understand why a trip has gone in a certain direction, I have to think about my past history, which has a great deal of sway over my mindset. I'll be 21 this September of 2008, and since I was about 16 or 17, I've steadily become more and more interested in psychedelics. It all started out with a few aborts my friend Zeke gave me one night at a small party of about 15 or so, in a small cabin in a quiet college town. I had read about psychedelics a great deal online, and was not actively seeking mushrooms, but hoping a great deal to come in contact with them. I had even gone to the extent of picking poisonous mushrooms, and became intensely ill from eating them. Why did I seek the mushroom, you ask? Well, of course the visual aspect is very interesting, but as I have learned more recently, it is better to just free my mind completely and not even focus upon those. Once the mind is clear, I am able to feel the love of something far, far greater than myself. The culture of the hippie area had always interested me a great deal, because of their willingness to love and embrace everything and everyone around them, no questions asked. Continuing with my drug history, which involved me seeing a beautiful floating orb of white light after my first trip, I became even more interested in the mushroom, and more interested in other psychedelics in general. Eventually I met Colas, who had become my greatest friend to date. We used psychedelics together a great deal, and even experienced telepathy and telekinesis in an LSD trip together, both witnessing the exact same thing at the same time. Earlier this year, Colas passed away in a fatal car accident. I've always had a history of having premonitions of sorts, a few examples being that of a building burning down, an explosion at a factory, and a couple months prior to Colas's death, a premonition that Colas would die. It was so startling that I immediately blew it off and refused to take it into further consideration, because if he did die, then it would happen either way. Last November, during our last trip together, we both started to break through to the other side. That feeling when I'm slipping between dimensions is absolutely breathtaking. My ability to feel bliss is what determines how far into these dimensions I can go. It seems as though between each dimension I go through, these masks that I wear that disguise who I really am. The more of these masks I wear, the harder it is for my soul to breathe. When my soul can breathe, I feel truly in touch with everything and everyone around me. Our breath is just a basic example of the flow of the universe and how everything is constantly changing. It is when I learned how to control my breath and travel into states as I choose that I experience true bliss. This is what I have learned in my LSD trip, mushroom trip, and last night, my mescaline trip since Colas died. He did experience bliss before he died though, and I am to this day convinced, as are many of my friends, that Colas was here to plant a seed in each of our minds so that we ourselves could spread this seed to others, and help others come into contact with the bliss that they have just forgotten how to access. Meditation is a great way to find this bliss as well. The trip. Last night I consumed 1 capsule of mescaline. It was a white powder, looked like it was decent quality. I suspect it was a trichoceros extract of some sort, but I could definitely be wrong, as the only other mescaline containing substances I have taken are Peruvian torch and San Pedro. Regardless, mescaline is a very smooth drug. It feels so natural, and I feel one with all of nature. In my experiences with DMT, I feel as though I am taken to an alien existence, in a dimension far from our own, where the function of reality is truly complex. With LSD, I feel as though I am strung across the astral plane, which is a very intense experience indeed. With mescaline though, I am riding a wave. If I so choose, I can manipulate this wave and flow seamlessly through space-time. It is a magnificent experience. However, I must say it has been painful having my ego softened enough to where I am able to experience this other existence as much as I am, and I'm very thankful and very blessed to have reached thus far in my trips. Admittedly, I am no expert, however. I'm no Terence McKenna, nor am I Timothy Leary. The things these guys must have experienced and seen and lived through fascinates me a great deal. I cannot even imagine how mentally solid they must have been. 3:30 AM. Ingested tablet with a bit of soda pop on an empty stomach. That same smooth mescaline wave is starting to creep up on me around 4:15 AM. 4:45 to 5 AM. Things have become rather wavy. There are beautiful neon colours flowing on the walls of green, pink, blue, purple, and perhaps more. I've closed my eyes now, and am laying on the couch putting my mind in a meditative state. 5 AM to 11 AM. For the remainder of my trip, I focused on living without my body, and experienced the greatest bliss I have ever felt in it. I was at the place I was at before I was born, which has become a bit more familiar to me the last few times I've tripped. It is a really beautiful place. This is the astral plane, but it seems so much different than when I'm on LSD. Maybe this is not the same place after all, but I know I'm living in a dimension that I call home. How I ever forgot where I came from, I do not know, but I promised the people there I would not forget, and I most certainly haven't. I cannot see nor directly speak to Colas, but I know he is in this existence somewhere, in some form, doing what he was meant to do. I can no longer hold on to his death. As the Tibetan monks say, mourning the death will only distract the soul from reaching nirvana. I must feel happy for him, feel pleased that his soul is now free. Feel happy that I am free, let go, experience the bliss that lies within if I simply live without the attachments of ego and body. But it is hard to let go. But why stay? What is there to fear? The unknown? This is the only thing I have ever had faith in. My love for everything around me. Focus on that love. Free my soul. I'm visualizing my soul trying to more or less walk out of my body. I do not know how to walk in this form. When I try to open my eyes, they will not open. I feel as though I am in a dream that I am trying to gain control over. I remember how this is done. Babies don't know how to walk, but they find a way. I focused. I began to struggle, wriggling out of my body and freeing the third eye. I continued to focus my mind on love, and rather than trying to walk, I learned another way to move my arms and legs. I'm not focusing my body, I'm focusing something else. I'm focusing my third eye. And now I can see reality for what it is. We are on a plane, and all of our paths are interconnecting, trying to form a greater net so that we can feel a greater presence once we are all united. I'm removing my masks now. I'm shedding my ego, remembering what is important to me. To lose the ego, I must realise that I am not the most important aspect of reality. I must learn to become the father, not just the son. To become the father, I must become selfless, and learn to truly give myself to the rest of the world. Just give my love to everything around me at all times. That is all it takes. I'm being reborn. I've shed my ego and am now in an existence I seem to know from some time long ago. It's so good to be back. For the remainder of the trip, I spent as much time in this state as possible, realising how perfect everything was, and simply trying to get to a point where I could steadily focus on that state and not lose it. I feel as though I accomplished a lot in this trip, and I look forward to accomplishing even more the next time around. This was an absolutely amazing experience, and it helped me let go of my friend's death. Love you, Colas. I'll see you again soon.
Wirikuta Calling, a peyote trip report by Leo, uploaded to earwid.org June 26, 2000. Nearly a decade ago, I first journeyed to Wirikuta, the sacred land of peyote. The name Wirikuta has similar meaning for the Huichol people of Mexico, as does our word heaven. Members of this tribe have been ceremonially reenacting the peyote hunt for as long as they can trace their origins. So it was that my interest in peyote and peyote people led me to this desolate but magical desert valley. Travelling to Mexico was definitely not in my plans that fall. Work, finances and family made it a pretty sure bet that any travelling I did would be done close to home. Enter Prem Das, an American married into the Huichol tribe, who at the time was based in Tepic, Nayarit. He had originally contacted me by phone after reading an article in a popular magazine, which I had provided information for. The article had been about peyote and its legal use in Arizona. Prem Das had been an avid student of peyote for several years. He let me know that if I shared his interest, I should make my way to the sacred valley of the Huichol as the next step in my own relationship with the sacrament. He listened patiently to all my reasons for staying home and being too busy to be bothered with spiritual travel adventures. One day, while visiting my home, Prem Das pulled an airline ticket out of his bolsa, shoulder bag. It was my ticket to Puerto Vallarta, flying with him and his wife to go visit their Huichol family. I was very happily surprised, but also slightly disappointed with myself for knowing that I couldn't just pack up and hop on a plane within 48 hours, no matter how much I might like to. Life was way too complicated, and I, way too previously occupied for that. I politely declined his generous offer. That night, we attended a peyote ceremony, co-hosted by myself and members of a local artisan community. Prem Das was the roadman for the evening. I mentioned to my artist acquaintances the airline ticket and my inability to accept it. Out of friendship and the concern for Prem Das's wasted purchase, I asked my artist friend Sharon to travel to Mexico in my place. She somewhat hesitantly agreed after hearing out my situation. I had not, however, counted on the working of the spirit of peyote. The medicine was very strong that night. During the peak of the ceremony, while my body sat apparently content, my inner being was in great turmoil. I sensed my life as I knew it had reached its natural conclusion. All my roads were leading nowhere. Life, for me, had become a charade. The driving tone of the water drum and Prem Das's chanting, normally very comforting,
now seemed to stir my pot of doubt and insecurity, until I could feel my spirit boiling over and evaporating into emptiness. Nothing in the world could at that moment have quenched my thirst for meaning, my hunger for purpose. Nothing, that is, except the hand of God. In my mind's eye, I saw a weeping child, myself, surrounded by empty space. Into that loneliness, a white, silvery eagle suddenly appeared. It swept down towards my vacant self, coming in for the kill, I thought. After all, my life felt more corpse-like than alive. As the sharp talons opened to grab its human prey, I suddenly felt the lifting of my self-pity and perhaps even fear. I was glad just to be able to let go and die in peace. Unexpectedly, I began to feel the eagle warm and bless me rather than scattering my soul to the void. A physical and spiritual blessing radiated from the eagle into my body, beginning where its formerly frightening talons now gently touched my head. I felt the peace of heart and mind that only God's Spirit can bring. Instantly, I realised that it had been too many years since I had fully bathed in God's healing light, too long running on my own knowledge and neglecting the daily blessings of Spirit. I awoke from my vision with tears streaming down my face. I looked across the fire as the drum beat on, and saw my friend Sharon watching me, smiling. I spent the rest of the night in meditative prayer, thanking God for the simple miracles of life. In the morning, everyone who had participated in the ceremony visited with each other and shared some of their experience. I sought out Sharon to thank her for standing in for me and accepting Prem Das's gift. "I want you to see what I drew last night around the fire," she said. She opened up her sketch pad, which she often carried, artist that she was. With an understanding smile, she showed me a pencil drawing of a white eagle coming to rest on the shoulders of a kneeling man. "That's what I saw when I looked at you last night, when you were weeping," she said. "I think you should go with Prem Das yourself." Almost in shock, I agreed. That was when Wirikuta welcomed me into itself and began to shape a new creature from an old lump of clay.